Good morning and welcome to a special meeting of the Milton Select Board on February 1st, 2024. At the outset, I just want to note that Mr. Wells is unable to be here today through no fault of his own. Unfortunately, he had to attend a funeral, so he's unable to be with us today. Item 2 is public comment. We allow 21 minutes for public comment by policy, up to 21 minutes, up to 3 minutes per person. Mr. Milano times the 21 minutes, I time the 3 minutes. And since we are a hybrid meeting today, we just go down the list in order by the hands being raised by the attendees in the hybrid meeting. And so we'll do that, and that's our normal practice. We'll just do that. We'll go down the list. If you want to participate in public comment and you're online, just raise your hand with the raised hand symbol. If you're attending by phone, it is *9. Just put *9 to participate in public comment. So first, public comment, we have Chris Hart. So you could promote Mr. Hart.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. If you just give your name and address and then go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Chris Hart. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 5, and I live on 55 Woodland Road. I'm supporting a yes vote on Article 1 on February 13th, and I was struck by some of the comments in last week's discussion about the Attorney General's January 16th document preservation letter. So I want to take a couple of minutes, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to provide my perspective. I should just start to point out my professional background. I've been a litigator for close to 20 years, the entire time primarily as a civil and criminal defense lawyer in private practice. And for that entire time, a regular part of my case docket has been defending my clients against investigations initiated by state attorney general's offices, the Department of Justice, and various state and federal agencies. The letter we received from the Attorney General's office follows the patterns I've seen over these last 2 decades defending my clients. It was a very clear warning to the town about the office's intention to pursue enforcement. This is not a scare tactic. It's not extortion. It's not fear-mongering. It's how the AG's office works. It's how law enforcement agencies work. It's common for agencies contemplating enforcement to tell potential defendants, and the town of Milton is a potential defendant, what they intend to do if the potential defendant does not comply with the legal requirement. It's also common for agencies to say that if we choose to reverse course and comply with the law, the agency will work with us. And it's also common to tell potential defendants not to destroy documents, since all those documents may be subject to discovery and litigation. I don't think it's helpful to sugarcoat this letter. If I received a letter from the IRS telling me that I might be subject to a lien if I don't pay my late taxes, that's not extortion. It's a warning and an invitation to cure my noncompliance. If I'm stopped by a Milton police officer for speeding and I'm provided a warning not to speed in the future or also get a ticket, that's not fear-mongering. That's an invitation to change my behavior or face a penalty. These are common ways that law enforcement acts. I ask that this select board simply be upfront with the town about the risks. Obviously, people on the select board differ on whether to vote yes or no. It's simply a question about being upfront. The AG's office did not send us a happy letter pledging collaboration. And I'm going to quote the language. First, quote, the Attorney General...
Yes. Mr. Hart, 30 seconds, sir.
Thank you very much. The Attorney General's office stands ready to work with any municipality, and it goes on, that seeks to meet its legal responsibilities. Next quote, our strong preference is for cooperation and collaboration, and it goes on, within the bounds of the law. And the last quote, my office will not hesitate to compel compliance with the MBTA Communities Act through legal action if necessary should a municipality refuse to comply. We can't ignore or wish away that risk.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you.
All right, next is Matt Moran. You could promote Mr. Moran, and if you could unmute yourself and give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. I'll let you know at 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. This is Matt Morong. I live at 136, excuse me, 136 Elliott Street. I want to bring about a matter to the board's attention, kind of late breaking news. Yesterday, I received a letter from the Sun Property Group informing me that my home, which is located right at the corner, I've said this over and over, right at the corner of Elliott Street and Central Ave, meets the property dynamics that appear to be a good fit for them. And offering to go start a conversation about the purchase of my home. This is not surprising, given that there is a state law in effect that declares MBTA communities shall have a zoning district within 1/2 mile of an MBTA station. I'm within a few hundred feet of Central Ave, with a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre. Currently, Milton is not in compliance with this law. This emphasizes the importance of a yes vote on February 13th. By voting yes, residents get a zoning plan that preserves the character of existing neighborhoods and respects the scale of those places by placing strict limits on heights and densities, minimizes incentives for teardowns by creating zoning that matches the parameters currently in place, and is the result of an extensive public process. If we find that this law needs tweaking in the future, there is opportunity for that action. Until this vote occurs, the transit area, starting from Blue Hill Ave all the way down Elliott Street, including the Columbines and the Milton Hill Historic District, will be under a threat of incompatible development at a developer's and court's whims. By voting no, the town will continue to be out of compliance with this law, leaving it vulnerable to the actions of real estate developers who do not care about preserving Milton's neighborhoods. In fact, no has no plan. We've been hearing about making this plan better, but after months of this argument, I haven't heard a single concrete proposal for how any opponent to this law intends to refine it and still comply with the guidelines set forth by HLC. The only way to save our neighborhoods against this type of development action is through a yes vote. Milton has an opportunity to control its destiny on February 13th, and a yes vote is the only way to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Next is Elizabeth Dillon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, if you could give your name and address, and you'll have up to 3 minutes, and I'll give you a indication of 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thanks. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Dillon. I live on 79 Governors Road. I'm here this morning to talk about speed humps and with a word of thanks and hope. I wanted to say thank you to the people of Governors Road who have trusted me starting about 1.5 years ago or so to do something about speeding and driver aggression on Governors. I started out knowing very little about this issue except that I wanted to help. Thanks to Fred Kibble, Ryan Mulcahy, Amy Robbins, Kate Finn, Heather Bergen, Mary Beth Chulo, Sarah Fagan, John Duff, and all the other neighbors who have worked together with me on this. I wanted to say thank you to the East Milton Neighborhood Association for your unwavering support and belief as we began on this journey together. Thank you to the members of the Traffic Mitigation Committee in 2020 for realizing the problems with traffic in our town, including Governor's Road, and setting the stage for the Select Board to be able to mitigate traffic hotspots. Chair Zulus, you were a key part of the Traffic Mitigation Committee, and I thank you. Thank you to the town meeting members who voted overwhelmingly to appropriate funds for traffic study and mitigation in our annual town meeting last year. Thank you to the Traffic Commission and especially DPW Chair Chase Berkeley, who gets a lot of complaints about traffic, but now that he's been given the resources by the town, has tirelessly worked cooperatively with us to get this done. Thank you to the police, Chief King and Lieutenant Alba, whose support for traffic mitigation is unwavering. We have seen increased enforcement in East Milton and on our street, and we appreciate you. Thank you to Fire Chief Madden and the entire Milton Fire Department for their unwavering support of our community and of our street. And thank you from the people of Governor's Road to Beta Engineering for studying our traffic problem and for finding real solutions that will not push traffic onto the side streets, but will instead be the first step in addressing the speeding crisis on our street and in East Milton. Thank you to our neighbors on Grafton, Garden, Gardner, Plymouth, Alden, and State for their support of the speed bump program. We promise that if we get speed bumps, we will work cooperatively with you on next steps to address volume in East Milton and work cooperatively to reduce cut-through traffic from Quincy and beyond. I meant it when I said I would give you my cell phone number. I plan to continue to voice my concerns, and as some of your TMM, I feel compelled to help. And of course, most importantly, a very special thank you to the Select Board for Chair Zulus for meeting with me and Ryan Mulcahy in person to address our concerns, to Richard Wells, who's not here today, but who spent a long time speaking with me on the phone, to Ben Zoll for speaking with me as well, and to Roxanne and Aaron, although I've not had the chance to speak with you directly on this issue yet, I appreciate your understanding and anticipated support. These
30
speed
seconds, Ms. Dillon.
These speed humps are 50 years coming, and I invite every one of the people I mentioned here today to a neighborhood block party on a date to be determined as soon as these speed humps are hopefully installed. Today, I'm confident that you will vote yes, and the town of Milton will have delivered on its promise to the people of East Milton. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Next is Maggie Oldfield. You could promote Ms. Oldfield.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. If you could give your name and address, and I'll give you a indication in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And you have up to 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Maggie Oldfield. I live at 397 Hillside Street. And on Tuesday, I received an invite from a friend asking to join him at the Milton Arts Center for a campaign rally where the guest speaker was the Lieutenant Governor. And the invite plainly stated to share with, quote, 3 of your contacts, end quote. So I went on the provided link and I reserved my spot. I then printed out the electronic ticket, and just as I was heading out to the art center, I received an email saying I was disinvited. I think it's a shame that people with different opinions were intentionally excluded from listening to a state official talk about something so important that is going to affect all of us. We may disagree on topics, but I feel like we all should be inclusive. And the select board has publicly proclaimed that Milton is a no place for hate community. And I feel like this invitation was a pretty hateful act and extremely exclusionary. So I do hope you reach out to the organizers of that event and share your proclamation with them. I do also hope that the courtesy of an invitation was extended to all board members. And I would hope that that would have been posted on your public meeting calendar, because I am wondering if any of the board members attended the event and if any open meeting law violation occurred, especially since you guys, the topic of the event was a subject matter that you guys are discussing and voting on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. Anyone else for public comment? I see Mr. Morong's hand up, although you may have had a little time left, Mr. Morong. I don't know if we don't typically have people come back a second time. So, I see your hand is still up. I hesitate to go back because I'm not sure exactly how much time you had. So if it's all the same to you. Oh, there you go. So the hands down. So that would have, I think there was some time left, but that would have been a little bit difficult to calculate. We don't typically do that. So anyone else for public comment? Just raise the hand symbol or press star 69 or star 9 rather, if you're on the phone. Give everyone just a minute. And I don't see anyone. All right, item 3 is discussion approval traffic commission report regarding recommendations. And the first is for Governor's Road traffic calming. And so I think we have Mr. Berkeley. So Mr. Berkeley, do you want to lead us through this?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thank you everyone for having us today. So the Traffic Commission met last Thursday, January 25th, and there's a series of recommendations that came out of that meeting, 2 of which require a vote in amendment to the traffic rules and orders of the town. And then the item that's first on your agenda, Governor's Road, we can talk about now. So essentially, it was recommended by the Traffic Commission that a pilot program be conducted to install speed humps on Governor's Road at various locations between the Quincy border and the in Edge Hill Road. And just so you know, so we do have our traffic engineer, Beta, Jeff Maxtutis, the principal that we work with, is on the call today. He's available and has the presentation that was provided at the traffic commission meeting ready. Totally up to you if you want to see it or have him walk through it, but he's available, just so you know. And so I thank you to Ms. Dillon for providing some of the background, and we have been working with the neighborhood for quite some time now on how to address numerous reports of driver aggression, safety concerns, and one of the reasons that we selected Governor's Road is it has been highlighted historically in many reports as a congestion point in town. The numbers certainly back that up, and it being a road that's shared with Quincy, so the other half of the road is in Quincy, and there's been several traffic calming solutions already implemented on their end, speed humps being one of them, and along with the truck restriction for commercial vehicles. We felt it was proper at this time, now that we have construction funding in our budget and also funding for traffic engineering services, which we didn't have in years past, to advance this to the next step. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to have Beta jump on. If not, I can walk through the other two recommendations, or if you want to speak about governors in more detail, happy to do that.
Yeah, maybe, why don't we take them separately? So why don't we focus first on governors? Comments or questions from the members? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chase, thanks so much for this, and thank you for all the time that you've spent with the neighbors over there. This is a serious issue, and I'm glad we're getting to it. I know when we met last, we had a group of neighbors from the adjacent street down. I can't remember. It's not Otis, but it's the one between. But do you know? I know that there was sort of the work's been done on Governors, and I think the concern was that if we put speed humps there, that might push the cut through traffic. Obviously, we don't want to hold progress on one street before we make everything perfect, because that's not a good system of government. But I'm just wondering if you've also thought about those adjacent streets, starting to put in measures for them as we go through the process for them as well.
Yeah, so great point, Mr. Zoll. So that topic was discussed during the traffic commission meeting. We had a number of residents from Grafton Avenue and some of those surrounding streets, Plymouth and State Street. And so the speed humps that are in place on Governor's Road already certainly haven't deterred the volume. So we're not anticipating on a traffic pattern change from installing them. But we did pledge to monitor pre and post conditions. So what we'll do is take traffic counts on all the surrounding streets prior to installing them, and then do a check after the fact to make sure that some unanticipated effect doesn't happen. But they're not anticipated to change the behavior of drivers. Most of those drivers are typically following GPS apps now, and unless you can severely alter the driving time down a road, which speed humps won't really do to a point where it would change the pattern for which they send a commuter in through that direction.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, definitely supportive of putting the speed humps on there. How many speed humps would they be, bumps, and how long is this pilot program of that? And then I would say a couple of points are that traffic in this town is one of the biggest issues that we hear from people on, and anywhere you go, traffic is a huge concern to residents. We have a lot of cut-through traffic in Milton, and this has been identified for a long time. And of course, we want to make sure that whatever's done there, we have to look at the surrounding streets, because we don't know what the impact will be. And I would also want to say that I hope that our board will, going forward, really support a lot of the other neighborhoods that are having these issues with cut-through traffic and numbers of cars and speed of cars. I know that over by the hospital, on some of those cut-through streets, there have been issues. People on Spafford and I think Buckingham and Clifton and all of those streets. Over near me, Brush Hill Road, this Canton Ave, my own street, my neighbor's street. So going forward, I really hope that this board will tune into that and be supportive of changes on these streets as they come up that are needed because of these issues that have happened on Governors. There are a lot of issues all over town with this too. So But yeah, if you could just please get back to me on how many bumps you're talking about and how long this pilot program would be for. Thank you.
I'm gonna take that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, oh, please, yes.
Yeah, so we've identified 4 possible locations. So some of the things to consider are, are there manholes in the street? We don't want to affect drainage in any way. Where do people's driveways line up, and where are the parking spots? So there's 4, possible locations. Likely the number will be 3, given the length of the street. Something to be worked out in the final design, but that's the thinking right now.
I think there was also a question on the timing for the pilot.
How long it would go
Yep.
for?
So we don't have a fixed time frame, but we did discuss at the traffic commission meeting was at least several months, and we wanted to make sure that that observation happened while school was in session. We don't want to look at traffic patterns over the summer because they tend to get very light. So ideally, we could build these in the spring, assuming we get approval, and will give us some time to watch the effect and determine if it was successful or not.
Thank you.
Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Chase, for being here today. I too live on a cut-through street, and we'll get to it later in this traffic section. But when I first moved to the town, I emailed the select board because I moved in with, at that time, I had 4 little kids. I live on a street that probably has, I don't know, maybe 12 houses on it, maybe 18. And pretty much in every house there was small children. I emailed asking for speed humps back in the day and was told that that is not something that the town of Milton does. Traffic is a huge problem across this town. And, I feel for those on Governor's Road. I've driven it. I've done that cut through a few times, not every time, but I have done it a few times. And I've seen the parking situation and how tight that road is to begin with. I wanted to know if the Traffic Mitigation Committee has come up with any guidelines regarding speed humps moving forward, because, honestly, the last thing we need is speed humps going everywhere where there's a traffic concern. The street that I live on, the town decided to do a bump out, which I'm going to hold my comments on that to when we get to my street, which I think is the next item. It has not been a great success here. So I feel for those on Governor's Road. I understand that street humps are what's probably going to be the best. I wish that I had those on my street instead of the design that was created. But I just am concerned that this is going to set a precedent, where, as Member Muster said, there is traffic concerns all over this town. It is the biggest thing that we get email about. And, I appreciate being on the Governor's Road email chain. I read all the little emails that get sent in that chain. But I think that this is a bigger item. And I think that we need to have some policies in place so that we don't end up, with speed humps on every street. So, Mr. Berkeley, if you could tell me if there's a plan in place or a plan that's going to be in place regarding the use of speed humps and when they are the right course of action for the town.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Bradley. Yes, so that was certainly discussed by the Traffic Commission, that there needs to be some type of metric to determine if and when. So speed humps are what we call vertical traffic calming solutions. And there's also horizontal traffic calming solutions, which is narrowing and necking and alignment changes. So it definitely not a solution for every street in town. There are surrounding communities that have identified which streets are eligible for which type of treatments. We'd like to get to something similar to that. So there's an expectation right off the bat that if you live on Reedsdale Road, we're not going to build speed humps in front of your house because, it's a high speed limit and it's a 4-lane, major roadway through town. So we are hoping that this pilot helps us drive those metrics and determine a formal policy.
Great. Thank you so much, Chase.
So I will add, the Traffic Mitigation Committee a few years ago engaged in an extensive public process to hear from the residents We had several public forums. We had a wiki map on the website to elicit responses about different hotspots in town. And in the final report, we identified, I believe it was six to eight hotspots in town. And the goal was to set up working groups for each of those hotspots. Now, through the pandemic, and it has been difficult to get some traction to establish these working groups for the hotspots. But the Governor's Road initiative here is the model. It's the residents getting together with the Traffic Commission, getting together with our traffic consultant, and working on a proposal that works for that hotspot. And so my hope is that this will begin a process for the other hotspots in town to establish these working groups that were recommended by the traffic mitigation report to try to address those specific problems for those specific hotspots. And so I think this is the model that we hope for. It's come up with a result that I think is a good result. And Chase, I just want to make clear that what we're voting on today is the pilot for the traffic calming, which is the speed humps with the monitoring of the adjacent streets.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. All right. Any other comments or questions on item 3A?
Mr. Chair, should we vote on these recommendations individually or as a group?
I think individually is a good idea.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion then that we approve the Traffic Commission's recommendations for Governor's Road as presented.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? This will be, all those in favor, this will be roll call vote. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And Mr. Zulish, yes. Thank you, everyone. And Chase, one thing we didn't talk about that we talked about in the Traffic Commission's meeting was the timing for this. And this is not going to take a lot of time because number one, we have the money, and number two, I think the idea is to do it in as soon as we can, perhaps early March. But maybe you can fill us in on the timing for this.
Yes, so the construction piece of it is actually pretty simple and not very time consuming. So it's really a matter of us ordering the materials and lining up the contractor. Our goal will be for early spring. Just contractor availability is pretty tight these days. So now that we have approval, we should get that penned in on the calendar as soon as we can.
Okay, so we can best case sometime in March.
Yeah, I would say March, April. We'll aim to get it in as early as possible.
Okay, yeah, let's try to do it as quickly as possible to get it going. Okay, all right. Anything else on that? Item 3A. We can go to item 3B, which is 190 Thatcher Street handicap parking space request. This is on the Lincoln Street side. So Chase, do you want to tee that one up for us, please?
Yes, so we received a request to create a one handicap parking spot. It's actually on Lincoln Street. It's the side of 190 Thatcher Street. There's a occupant of that home with cerebral palsy that indicated to us that the shortest possible distance from his vehicle to his front door would be preferable. And that happens to be the very first spot on Lincoln Street. So we put it on the agenda last week. No one from the public commented at all on it, but the Traffic Commission did support it. We did have the request in writing from the owner of the home. And this is something that we have done in other locations in town when the requests come up. We just put one caveat on it that it be only while the person lives there and removed once that, if and once that person doesn't live there anymore.
Thank you, Chase. Comments or questions from the members, Ms. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I live on Lincoln Street, as Mr. Berkeley knows. I did not get any notice of this meeting. I tried and track everything. In fact, I just spoke to Mr. Milano about how to subscribe to our town's calendar so that I can get all the meetings posted on like my calendar. It's a very complicated thing, but I did not know that this was on the agenda for the traffic mitigation, nor did any of my neighbors. Nobody on Lincoln Street was notified. As I've said, there's not many houses on this street. There's probably 18 to 20. I could do the count right now, but I haven't had enough coffee. A few years ago, you did traffic mitigation on my street, and it was one of the hot spots that was identified because we are the cut through for Pierce Middle School. We are the drop off street. Oftentimes we can't leave our driveway during school pickup or drop off, especially if it's snowing or raining. Forget it. You might as well sit and watch the traffic for at least 20 to 30 minutes. In that traffic mitigation, you did bump outs on our road, a nice big sidewalk on one side and a few parking spaces on the other side. I live on the other side. I live on the same side as the handicap spot that is up for approval today. And there are probably, for the 18 to 20 houses on this road, there are probably, I don't know, I want to say 8 parking spots. Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not many. When delivery trucks come, they have no idea how to navigate this street because, you know, usually you can pull over to the side on both sides of the street. You can't on my street. So they park in the middle of the street. Traffic gets backed up. Oil trucks come down the street. They park in the middle of the street because, again, they don't either have the space to pull in front of another house or there is not a parking space in front of the house that they need to get to. The street is extremely congested still to this day. Garbage trucks have ruined the bump out on the Thatcher Street side because they can't make the cut to turn down the road. So the new sidewalk that we have is completely cracked and chipping and breaking already. The garbage trucks live at the parking lot at the end of my street, which is for school parking. So it's not an ideal street. I feel for this person that lives at the end of the street and understand that they want a designated parking spot. However, the 2 parking spots that are there are for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. 5 houses, there's those 2 spots right there. And so if anybody has guests coming over for the night, there's nowhere to park on our street. There's nowhere for people to be unless they drive to the end, park in the lot that we're not supposed to park in, even though construction vehicles are there all the time, and walk down the street, which is what I tell my people to do. I'm like, well, just get your steps in, you know, go park there. This is not an ideal street to put this handicap spot. I understand that it's the closest to their front door. I know exactly, I think it's a rental house. I don't know that it's occupancy, owner occupied, but it is a 2-family and it's, I believe it's a rental. I will vote in favor of this because my father has had to have a handicap spot and you can't find them around town, and I get it. But I think there needs to be some real consideration about what we're doing to the smaller streets that don't have 60 parents on it that are advocating for things. This street has been a nightmare for the town since I moved in here. And I gotta tell you, while I like the big wide sidewalk across the street and my family uses it every single day, it has not been an ideal situation for us and it has not calmed the traffic here. In fact, it has created more of a bottleneck and it has created a place where nobody has anywhere to park. This street, you know, I love it, but there's a lot of 2 families on this street. A lot. I don't even know. Hardly any of them are owner occupied. I think maybe 3 are. But you got two homes, you got a driveway that fits maybe 2 cars, and you've got 4 adults. You've got 2 other cars that need to park on the street. This is going to totally back up our street even more. And it's on the entrance to the street from Thatcher. So it's concerning. I've said my piece. I'm going to vote for it because I feel for this person. But this is absolutely not ideal. And nobody's come back by and talked to the neighbors since we had this thing put in about our feelings about it and how it's working. So maybe we could do some follow-up after we do some traffic mitigation in places around town to see how the neighbors are surviving. Because I got to tell you, if Amazon comes down our street, I don't know, at least 6 times a day, traffic's completely backed up. You cannot leave your home. So That's it. That's my piece. I'm gonna go drink my coffee now. Thank you, Mr. Berkeley.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Mr. Berkeley, do we, if it is a rental or even if it's an owned unit, do we have how do we determine when the residents moved out? I plan on voting for this. I'm just wondering about the process, so that we would remove this spot.
Yeah, that's an excellent point to bring up because there really is no official policy on these spots. So if you go to, say, the city of Boston, they have a 2-year renewal requirement. And, that's similar to us in other ways like surface zone parking and stuff. But there's just so few of these spots amongst town. I don't think an official policy was ever drawn up for them. So, I'll put the burden on my department and the police to monitor it. And if it appears that it's no longer being used, we'll engage with the owner and find out for sure.
It might be a good idea to think about, even if we don't have that many, if we want to put in like a 2-year, which is sort of check in to make sure that a spot like that is still being used appropriately.
Yeah, thank you. I agree.
Thanks.
Other comments and questions on item 3B?
Now, Mr. Chair, if nobody else, I'm sorry, Ms. Musto, if you wanted to say something, I was going to make a motion to approve.
No, I was just going to second.
Mr. Zulus, I'll make a recommendation to approve the handicap parking space for 190 Thatcher as presented by Mr. Berkeley.
And I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This will be, any further discussion? This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 3C is the do not enter restriction at Elliott Street at Blue Hills Parkway. Mr. Berkeley.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So for quite a number of years, there's been a time restricted do not enter from Blue Hills Parkway onto Elliott Street, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. During the MBTA track repair project back in October, for construction purposes, those were removed to allow the shuttle buses to enter the street during that period of time that we're replicating the trolley service. And we were approached by a resident in that neighborhood that said, we don't believe these restrictions are necessary anymore ever since the geometry of the whole interchange was done over, and I think it was 2015 era. And so there's no way now for traffic coming from Blue Hill Ave to take a right onto Elliott Street as they could before all the curbing was realigned. So at our November 2023 Traffic Commission meeting, we supported leaving the signs down for a trial period time, just to keep an eye on things, and have received no negative feedback whatsoever. So we took a formal vote last week to leave those signs down permanently.
So the motion would be to remove, their recommendation is to remove the do not enter Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. restriction permanent.
Yes.
That's the recommendation. Yeah. Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unless someone feels the need to speak about this as someone who used to live right off Elliott, I think Mr. Berkeley is exactly right about the changing of that intersection and the subsequent effect on traffic. So I would like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendation, approve the Traffic Commission's recommendations for the removal of the do not enter restriction signs on Elliott Street at Blue Hills Parkway.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 3D is I guess it's a discussion about proposal on Hollis Street and a request on Colorado. Mr. Berkeley, do you want to give us an update on those?
Sure. So those are two items that were brought to our meeting last week that we felt in the case of Hollis Street. So there was a proposal by a resident who lives there to make a portion of the street one way, citing a lot of congestion and a lot of near misses in the vicinity of the post office rear driveway in the back of the Art Center, it being very narrow and it being a constant flow of people parking and going to the post office. So we didn't have any specific recommendations other than that we thought this was worthy of further study. And that's a similar conclusion on the Kaler Ave and Thatcher Street request, that it warrants more investigation, but no recommendations at this time.
Comments and questions on Hollis Street and Kaler Ave? Mr. Berkeley, what, do you have any sense on the timing for the review of those two items?
So Hollis Street is one would probably ask for assistance through with Beta to look at that, because that's one example of where our new traffic model would be very helpful. So we can simulate a one-way traffic pattern change and try to determine the effects of that in the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding streets. The Kaler Ave and Thatcher, we're going to include that. So we have a grant application out for Warren Avenue right now to get some state money for improvements there. And we're hoping that we can roll in Warren Ave, Houston, and Kaler kind of all together in one package if we receive that grant.
So these reviews will take, some period of time, some period of months?
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Other comments or questions on item 3D? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Berkeley. And we'll look forward to the next report from the Traffic Commission.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Item 4 is a discussion vote on the February 13th ballot question. Mr. Wells, who through no fault of his own is unable to be here today, has requested that we delay a vote on this until a meeting that he could attend. We may not be able to have a meeting between now and February 13th because of schedules. I think we're going to try, but we may not be able to. So my suggestion would be, if the members want to discuss it and discuss their views on it, but maybe we delay a vote until if and when we get a chance to meet before February 13th. That's my suggestion, Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with that we should still discuss it. I'm just wondering if we should have if there's a way to have a preliminary vote that we could subject to change if we can get another time. I've been back and forth with Mr. Milano several times in the last couple of days to try to find a time. I hope that we can find a time that Mr. Wells can chime in, because I think his voice is an important one here. I just don't want us to be in a position where we haven't taken an official position before the ballot, because I think it is important that we do that.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would hope that we would wait. First of all, I just want to back up. I'm wondering why we need to take a vote on this. This is going to the residents. And I think that the residents shouldn't be necessarily influenced on a ballot initiative by us as a board. I think people should be able to look at information on both sides and make decisions. And I think that that's more of a democratic process. And at this point in time, I don't know why we would, be doing that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Mr. Zoll would like to take a conditional vote. Ms. Brad, thank you I was just trying to work things through in my mind, but maybe you'll offer a suggestion that'll bring it all together.
Well, I haven't had that much coffee, Chair Zulis. I'm gonna agree with Member Zoll. I too, let me just say, 20 minutes before this meeting was about to take place is when I was first approached to have another meeting on the topic. As Member Musto has said multiple times, I was prepared to take a vote today. I had no idea that we weren't going to be taking a vote. At one point, I thought the meeting was going to be canceled because Mr. Wells wasn't going to be here. There has been plenty of time to think about this. And while I agree that having Member Wells's vote is important, I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to, oh, look at that, on an oil truck right now in the middle of my street. I'm concerned that we won't be able to find a time. Sorry, my dog's going to go off. So I agree that we should take a conditional vote today. And then if we work it out for next week, I know that when we were trying to plan this at our last select board meeting, this was the only date that we could find before February 13th. I do think it's important that we let the voters know where the select board stands as the legislative governing body of the town. I think that it is an important thing that we are the ones that put it forward to begin with at town meeting. And so I think it's important for us to take a vote and say where we stand on something that we had put forward previously and was approved by 2/3 of town meeting members. I have been watching the planning board meetings and know that they have taken a vote, untaken a vote, possibly taken a vote again. It's a little confusing on what they did earlier this week, but they too have taken a stand on this ballot question, or they did. And so I think it is important to the residents that they hear from the two boards that are the ones that are determining where the zoning is going.
Right, so, Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering if we do have an update on what the planning board did at their last meeting. I didn't watch it. Does anybody have an update? Mr. Milano, perhaps?
I have not viewed the meeting yet.
Yeah, I haven't either, so I don't know. Don't know. I think it was, yeah, I don't know.
I watched it, but I don't know that I am prepared to comment on it because I was really confused by it, honestly.
Okay. All right, well, perhaps what we can do is, if people want to take a vote, we could take it, and we want to respect, Mr. Wells, because certainly there was no fault of his own that he couldn't be here today. Maybe we would make a vote subject to reconsideration at a subsequent meeting, prior to February 13th. Maybe we do that, and then we could have a discussion, we can have that conditional vote, and then if we're able to assemble prior to the 13th, then we can reconsider that. Mr. Zoll.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think that seems like a good compromise, and I think just to sort of respond a bit to Ms. Musto's points, the select board often takes official stances. When we have the warrant for town meeting, we take an official stance. This is in fact a special town meeting, so I think we should be treating it exactly the same. We would always take a stance on articles in the warrant for a town meeting, as this is considered a special town meeting. I think it's entirely appropriate for the select board to continue its practice of taking a stand on a particular article. Thank you.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to note that we're a 5-member board, and we're missing a member who has clearly said that he wanted to weigh in on this issue. I think that, it's such an important issue for the town. It's probably one of the biggest issues before us. I think that it's, not a good precedent for us to sort of make something and then conditionally we'll hear what he has to say. I don't think that's right at this point in time. We've often made changes to our schedules to accommodate people. And I don't think this is the right message to do. So for me, I could not support doing that. Thank you.
Right, and I will say we're making every effort to try to coordinate everyone's schedules so that we can meet prior to February 13th. But it is, as you know, Ms. Musto, it's a challenge. So I think there's every intention to do that. At the same time, we do have members that do want to speak on this, and this could be the last opportunity to do that. And so I think if we allow the members to speak, and they can speak with a vote and make it a conditional vote, and then if we're able to meet again, and I hope we are prior to the 13th, then we can reconsider it. So I think that's a fair way to do it, just because of the timing, And we may not have a chance to meet because of schedules for prior to the 13th. We're gonna try, but it hasn't been as easy as we'd hope, but we'll continue to make every effort to try to change the schedule and meet again prior to the 13th. So, all right, so why don't we if we want to address the substance, if we want to address the substance to this, I don't know if any member wants to address the substance of it. Item 4, Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to take a couple of minutes, and I'd ask the board's indulgence for that. And you know, I am very sympathetic to Mr. Wells. I'm very sorry for his loss, and my thoughts are with him and whoever else is mourning this morning. It's never a great reason to miss a meeting, but I think, you know, we are all living busy lives and trying our best. But so I'd just like to speak for a few minutes because I think this is an important issue, and I think the residents deserve to know what the truth is about this issue. And I'm worried, frankly, that there's been a lot of mis and disinformation that's been circulating about this issue. And so we've heard from multiple people why this is the right thing to do, because it provides housing diversity for our young families, for seniors looking to downsize, because it provides more affordable options for folks in town, not affordable housing per se, but that's part of it. And because it prevents us from losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in state monies, millions of dollars of potential future state funding, as well as the legal fees, as well as the fines that we may be subjected to, the court costs that we're going to be subjected to. I think any Milton taxpayer could look very easily and say we do not have the budget to absorb those kinds of losses to fight the fight that our town council has already told us we're going to lose. But we've heard all those reasons why voting yes is a good thing. It's the legally, morally, and fiscally responsible thing to do. So I thought I would address this ad, which has come up in the Suburban Shopper 2 weeks in a row. And I'm assuming that this ad is the best argument that the no folks have because they've run the same ad twice. And it has 5 bullets. I'm sorry, I got a blurry background. But if you've received it, and I'll read them for you quickly, I just feel like it's important to address each of these arguments because for all of the reasons to vote for, there must be good reasons to vote against. So I want to start by saying that each of these bullets points out that there is no plan for something, some element of the existing plan is lacking something. And I would sort of counter that there is no other plan. So every time that the point is made that there's no plan for something, that same is true for the no side. So let's take this whole thing with a grain of salt to start. The first bullet that has been brought up and that we hear about a lot is that there's no plan for traffic. Mr. Chair, I believe that most everyone engaged in this debate really does want what's best for Milton. But I believe that it's important to be honest with the citizens. And the idea that there's no plan for traffic is false. It's not true because this is a zoning plan. It is not a construction plan. Planning for traffic happens when a design plan is submitted. So we can zone a space for 100 units and a developer could come in and say they're going to put 25 or they're going to put 50 or they're going to put 100. And when they do that, they come forward with their traffic plan. So the idea that there's no plan for traffic is just not true. It's part of the process. And as this happens, the planning board will have oversight of the traffic plans that happen around the development. If there's no development proposed, then there won't be any plans for traffic. So why would we spend the town's time and resources when we know that whoever decides to develop the property is going to have to do that? So that's just not true. It's not true. And it's important to say that it's not true because we're often told that this is a problem and it's not. This planning for traffic is part of this process. The second point that they say is that there's no plan to pay for the impact of an additional 2,461 zone multifamily units. So this is, I hesitate to use the word, but I can't say it any other way. This is a lie twice over, okay? The reason that it's a lie the first time over is that they say an additional 2,461 zone multifamily units. We know that this plan does not have that many additional units. It has, if it's fully built out, which it probably won't be for 25, 50 years, but if it's fully built out, the maximum number of new units would be 1,733. So they're using a false number. I think that that's reprehensible. I think it's reprehensible to use a number that they know is not true. whoever they is, Milton Neighbors for Responsible Zoning, they're using numbers that they know are not true to try to scare people. And I get accused of scare tactics all the time when I'm just laying out the facts. And I'm laying out the facts here that this is not true. The second reason that it's not true is because it says there's no plan to pay for it. The planning board engaged a consulting group which looked at similar projects throughout Milton and in similar neighborhoods, and they have determined that if everything is built out, which we don't think that will be, but when everything is built out, that this would actually result in a net gain of revenue. Okay, so there is a plan. The plan pays for itself. The no plan has no plan to pay for our legal fees, our fines, the loss of revenue that we're going to have from the state. So if you're talking about fiscal responsibility, that's important to know. The third point, and again, I hate to belabor this, but they've run this twice in the suburban shopper, and I know how expensive that is. So they clearly believe these are their best arguments. The third point is that they say there's no equitable distribution of units. That the law prohibits us from equitably distributing this exactly 100% across the whole town. We are required by law to put 50% of the units within a half a mile of a transit stop. We are required by law to have a particular amount of density. We are required by law to make sure that each district, which can consist of districts, is at least 5 acres in size. Everyone on this board, everyone on the planning board, and anyone who's paid attention to this process knows how many iterations that we went through. We looked at Fuller Village, we looked at Winter Valley, we looked at properties that made members of this board upset that we were looking at them, just so that we could try to say that we have looked at every corner of Milton to try to make this as equitable as possible. So that there's no plan for equitable distribution of units is not true, because it A, legally can't be true, and B, hundreds of thousands of dollars were put into the planning process to make sure that this was as equitable as possible. We heard from communities, 30 plus community forums, plus planning board and select board meetings. This is as equitable as it gets, okay? And by the way, again, there is no plan for equitable distribution on the other side as well. The fourth point, no plan for increased affordability. Again, this is a lie. It's a lie. The planning board is currently planning for raising the bar from 10% to 15% for affordability. They're currently engaged in that with this plan. The planning board's doing it. Maybe these folks don't know that that's happening, but if they do, shame on them. If they don't, then also why are they spending thousands of dollars on advertising something which is not true? The fifth point is that there's no plan for reclassification. We have a historic trolley. It's not rapid transit. So again, this is, I will use misdirection or mistruth for this, because there is no way to be reclassified. We have written to the state twice with very strong language suggesting that we have been misclassified, asking for explanation of our classification. We have been told it's not happening. The Attorney General's letter made it very clear that the state considers us to be an MBTA community. Chelsea is an MBTA community. Chelsea has one Silver Line bus stop, one Silver Line bus stop. Imagine if we had one Silver Line bus stop and we were being asked to do this. Imagine the hair pulling would have happened at that point. We have a real trolley in this town, and I moved to this town because of that trolley. I rode it every day as a commuter for years. It's a good trolley, and not only is it good, it's going to get better, because the state is investing $114 million in the redesign of it. They're investing $12.2 million in the meantime to refurbish the PCC cars that are on there. I'm going to miss the orange cars because I love them. I think they're beautiful. But when we have the nice green cars, the same cars that are rolling down the B, C, and D lines, rolling through Milton, it's going to be better for us. It's going to be better for residents that have disabilities and make it easier for them to get on. So, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Thank your indulgence for going through this. I just feel it's important to point out that the best 5 arguments that have been brought forward twice to as many Milton people as possible are either not true or they're deliberate mistruths. So the folks of Milton should know. I've been accused of fear-mongering. I've been accused of over-exaggeration. I know that I don't always come across as warm and fuzzy. I'm not a politician. I apologize for that. But I really think everybody wants what's best for Milton. But there's only one group that's telling you the truth about this, and there's another group that's telling you this, they're making you believe something that's not true. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to end my comments. I'm not going to respond to anybody because I appreciate how much time that I took up. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Several points I think need to be raised here. One is, again, tell the truth. I think the truth is what is not being told here either. even you yourself, Member Zoll said, we sent 2 letters, strong letters for explanation of classification. Now, you tell me if explanation of classification is asking for reclassification. 2 different asks. So when people say we asked, no, we didn't. And in fact, with that first letter, I know you had a lot of influence on that letter because you did a lot of the alterations of that letter. So I think we need to be truthful about that. Again, if we had done our due diligence and had really asked for that and shown the reasons why, might have a different outcome. I think both sides do want to get to a situation that is right for the town. I'm troubled by the fact that I heard earlier that there was a forum where people were turned away. I personally did not get an invitation to that forum. That happened with the Lieutenant Governor, and I do find that troubling. As far as traffic studies, I know you had mentioned that there are things that can be done based on modeling. They've used that a lot of times. If they are anticipating X number of units, they can look at what the traffic implication might be. We're one community. I feel like we're selling out the East Milton residents on this plan. This is a select board plan. It's not a planning board plan. We have an opportunity that we could have made it better. We could have added the affordability in by doing a study, but we were in such a rush to try to get something on the books instead of looking at the big picture. So I ask everybody, are we willing on a board to sell out one side of town? 50% within half mile of transit and the other 50% elsewhere. I don't know if the exact numbers actually equal out to that. The point being, the whole purpose of this whole thing was transit-oriented development. Seems to me that a plan that put more near the transit was the plan that we should have gone with. But again, we were in such a rush. Boston, again, has 17% affordable. We have 10%. For people that believe that putting out, whatever number it ends up being, whether it's 2471, but you say it's not, so 1730, that means that we will need more affordable housing, 40B actually, we'll need more 40B to keep up with that because we only have 10% on rentals. I think we can do better. I think we have an obligation to the residents in this town to do better. We're one community. What we're doing is we are pitting people against pitting neighborhoods against neighborhood. We're pitting people against people. I think that it's not equitable in terms of this. Putting more units on one section of town is a burden. It was just not even close to getting to amenities. It's more than half a mile. So again, I think that we could have done better. I think we have an obligation to the residents, and I think that we have an obligation to listen to whatever the vote may be, whether it's for or against, and stop selling out one side against another. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Well, no one was in a rush. This was done over a year and a half. Wasn't just a select board plan. Had the input from the planning department, planning board, the consultants. No one's selling anyone out. This board certainly since last September has asked and sought whether there's a better plan, whether there's something different to do. There's been nothing presented in terms of anything better. We're always open to that. Everyone's always open to that. Everyone's always would be accepting of a better plan. Just hasn't been presented since September when we first proposed this one. So this, 28-page proposed zoning meets the primary goal that Milton residents, people we represent, have sought in planning for many years. And that is to preserve the physical character of the neighborhoods. Now, how does it do that? Well, for one example, this 28-page zoning protects East Milton Square from overdevelopment by requiring lower building height, more open space, and bigger setbacks. It is a disincentive for developers in East Milton Square. And the goal is to maintain the status quo until the East Milton residents decide on what they want for overlay zoning. And that's all found at page 23 in this 28-page document. As another example, the non-residential properties zoned on Granite Ave, what's been referred to as 500 units or 1,100 units, they allow us to get credit for those units in non-residential areas right next to the highway, so we don't have to zone for them right in the middle of our neighborhoods. Now, specifically, that state-owned DPW lot on Granite Ave, it's across the 4-lane state road from Portland Circle and Thistle Ave. It's got 3 existing buildings, storage tanks, trucks. It's got a 200-spot park and ride parking area where there are 200 cars every day. It is not subject to the town's zoning. State could have done something different with it over the last several decades, regardless of our zoning, but it hasn't. The state would have to decide to move all its operations, to move those buildings, and to move the 200-car park and ride lot somewhere if they were going to do something different with that property. But if we include it in our zoning, we get to count those 368 units without zoning for them right in the middle of a neighborhood in Milton. And we protect against the potential for bigger buildings being right next door to existing houses in our neighborhoods. And if the state did decide to move all its operations, to move that 200-car park and ride lot somewhere, and tried to sell it to a developer, it would have to fix that 4-lane road. It would have to put in stoplights, which is what the Cortlandt Circle and Thistle Ave neighborhoods want. And a developer would also have to somehow fix the water issues. It's the same with 2 Granite. Up the road, half a mile past the highway, right next to the Dorchester border. It's a relatively new commercial building. It's got an anchor tenant in it, Catches Law. And that tenant is an anchor tenant. And look, that's not going to change anytime soon. We zone for 171 units in that commercial building. That's a half a mile away from any neighborhood in Milton. And we get to count those 171 units towards our minimum and without zoning for them right in the middle of a neighborhood. And that helps to preserve the physical character of our neighborhoods. As we also know the zoning, because we've all read it, we've all, and now hopefully the voters will all read it. There are 4 pages of development standards, pages 27 to 31, and there are another 2 pages of site plan design and review requirements at pages 33 to 35. They all benefit our neighborhoods, and that would all be lost if we vote no. Now, we've seen this movie before. 5 years ago, there was an organized effort to say no to the Falcone development in East Milton. Organized effort to say no. So the same arguments were made, the traffic, and we don't need to worry about 40B, the law, and we'll beat them in court. And that was a 50-unit project with commercial development and parking. And the no's won. The no's defeated that project. And the result of the no's winning and defeating the Falcone project is that 50-unit project is now a 92-unit project with no commercial and no parking. A 50-unit project on Adams Street. We said no to that because we thought we could beat the law or go to court, and it became a 92-unit project. And I fear that that's what will happen if we say no again. I fear that it will be bad for our town, and I fear that it will particularly be bad for East Milton. The truth is that this zoning is no housing advocate's dream, and it's not the choice of residents who don't want to comply with the law right now. It's right in the middle. It preserves the character of our neighborhoods with the minimal compliance with the law. That's what the residents have said they wanted, and that's what was delivered. And that's why the town meeting members who reviewed this and debated it for 7 hours ended up approving it by 2/3. So again, the consequences of the no vote, if we vote no on February 13th, we'll be in violation of the law. We'll face lawsuits from the Attorney General and others. Our zoning will be controlled by a judge or a special master who won't be interested in preserving the character of our neighborhoods. Funding will go down, costs will go up, and it's the Milton taxpayer who will be hurt by all of this. And, you know, we now know from what's been calculated that there are basically 3 buckets of funding that will go down if we say no on February 13th. There are the specific grant programs in the law and the guidelines, MassWorks, which we got $1 million from for infrastructure in 2012. Municipal vulnerability preparedness grants, which we got $100,000, over $100,000 in the last 5 years from that. We got $80,000 in community planning grants in 2023. We got $60,000 for a local rapid recovery plan for East Milton in 2021. And we got $40,000 for East Milton mixed-use overlay zoning in 2022. We also know that the second bucket is those competitive discretionary grants that are controlled by the government. We benefited from these grants over the last 3 years to the tune of $1.7 million in the area of schools and DPW and health and IT and planning. And we know that these are all at risk. We know that because last week we were granted $140,000 to finally fix our seawall on our dock down at the landing. And that is subject to compliance with the MBTA communities. And if we vote no on February 13th, we don't get it. If we vote yes, we do. Finally, we know now that we've been told by the Boston Metropolitan Planning Organization, which judges the transportation improvement program projects from which we have benefited to a large degree, several million dollars over the last few years, that we will be penalized if we are not in compliance with the MBT Communities Act. We have future projects such as $19.4 million for reconstruction on 138 from Dollar to Royal to Dollar Lane, $4.8 million for the intersection of 138 and Bradley. And we're going to be penalized 5 points in that competition for those grants going forward. And those grants, just so everyone knows, as we've been told by the planning department, those are usually decided by 1 point and 1.5 points. So 5 points is certainly will make getting those that funding for our roads difficult going forward. So these are real consequences. They'll cause real damage to our town and to our residents. I think as town leaders, we have a responsibility to be responsible. I think we have a responsibility to act in the best interests of the residents. A no vote says no to Milton residents who want to preserve the physical character of our neighborhoods, and I can't do that in good conscience. A no vote says no to Milton taxpayers, and I can't do that in good conscience. A yes vote is a responsible vote. A yes vote is a vote to Milton residents and particularly for Milton taxpayers. And so that's what I hope we'll support as a board for the referendum. Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Few things to say here. With regards to the plan in the letter that we got from the AG. So the Attorney General also said that she would work with us to comply. I think that's important. I think that we certainly could try to work with the AG's office on compliance. I think that we can do better. We can do better for all of the residents in this community. When RKG did their analysis, their fiscal analysis, my understanding is that they did not talk to any of the department heads. And I think that's important because there are consequences of putting in development for all of these areas. whether it be our roads, our sewer system, public health, police, fire. We really don't know what the costs of that are. And I think the other part I would say is that we have an opportunity here to, even work on our own plan to get it better. I think that the planning board has the opportunity to do something better. We were stuck with a deadline that was an arbitrary deadline of December 2023 for the communities that are considered rapid transit. And that put a lot of pressure on the town to get something in. It's not a great plan. I said it all along. Is a trolley stop a subway station? We could have asked about that. We could have pursued that. We chose not to. Our letters could have asked for reclassification. Again, we didn't. Perhaps the best route would have been to have gone right to the, either Maura Healey or the Attorney General with that argument and met with them even and see what could have been done. I think we have an obligation, as you said, Mr. Zulus, to the residents, and we certainly do. We have an obligation to the town and to everybody in the town, all areas of the town. And I think that's let the chips fall where they may, and let's let the residents vote on these proposals and let them research both sides. And I find it troubling that we are not being open-minded to that process. Thank you.
Well, I would just say, Ms. Musto, if you have a suggestion or anyone has a suggestion to improve this plan, we'll put it on the agenda. If someone from the planning board has a suggestion we'll put it on the agenda. It's been since September and no one has made any suggestion about an improvement to it. Now, that doesn't mean we're certainly, I think we as a board, we've been saying since September, give us something better, give us an alternative. So I think if we want to put something on the agenda for our next meeting, if you have a suggestion for an alternative, we'll certainly put it on the agenda. And I will point out, we did make the argument to the MBTA that the trolley was not part of the red line. It was not a subway station on the red line. I put together about a 75-page packet supporting that back in September. And that was not something that was agreed with by the MBTA or the HLC. Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I promise not to speak so long, so I'm going to try to keep this really short. I just want to say, I think Ms. Musto's use of the word "let the chips fall where they may" is entirely appropriate because this is gambling. We are gambling with the financial future of this town. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential fines, legal fees, lost revenue. When you take that gamble, it's not just a roll of the dice of your own resources. Lost revenue means maybe we can't hire another teacher next year, or we have to lay off teachers, or we can't afford to hire the same number of firefighters or police. We can't do road improvements. Okay, I'm not willing to take that gamble. Just a couple of other points. The only way that we can continue to work on this is if we vote yes. If we vote no, town council has advised, unless we come up with something that is both somehow adhering to the same guidelines and also radically different from what we've already done, that we're not going to be able to put it forward. And the Attorney General has not said that she's going to work with us if we vote no. This is not true. The letter says very specifically that we have an MBTA community, we have an obligation to respond. And I know it's very popular to poo-poo when consultants tell us something or lawyers tell us something, because in my gut, I don't think this is 100% accurate. But guess what? Consultants know what they're talking about, and so do lawyers. And lawyers have told us that the Attorney General, her letter is an indication that the town will be sued if we vote no. Now, we can gamble with that. Sure, let's gamble. But let's be clear about what the stakes are. The stakes are that we may have to lay teachers off. The stakes are that we will have worse roads, not better roads, if we vote no, because we'll lose access to state funding. And the best part of that whole gamble is that you know what the end result is going to be. We're going to still end up having to comply with state law. So we're going to gamble away teachers, firefighters, police, and roads on a 1 in a million chance that somehow every lawyer that's looked at this and the state attorney general and the governor have all somehow going to change their mind because, well, they've said that they're going to work with us. I mean, I like to play a little bit of poker. That's a trash hand. That's a 2-7. You throw that away. You do not let the chips fall where they may on that. And it's important to be honest to the residents. This is not fear mongering. These are consequences. And it's important for them to know that it's their tax dollars at risk. It's their kids at risk. It's their seniors at risk. It's their roads at risk if you gamble and vote no. And the last thing I want to say is, anytime we set a deadline, it doesn't make it an arbitrary deadline. The nature of government requires you to set deadlines. We know what happens when you don't set deadlines. You get what has happened in Milton for 100 years, which is that we haven't changed our zoning for 100 years. Now we're finally coming up with a deadline. Think of it as a 100-year deadline. We've had 100 years to try to gradually evolve to, like Boston has, to be a town that's adjacent to the most dynamic city in the world, and we haven't done it. So is it an arbitrary deadline? No, it's a state-imposed deadline, and it was imposed not just on us, but on every MBTA community, including Chelsea, which has one Silver Line bus stop. One Silver Line bus stop. They are an MBTA community, they're compliant. We are not. So let's just be honest. When we use gambling rhetoric, it's correct. It's correct. But the odds are long, the stakes are very high, and we've got a lot of people telling us not to go into that casino. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you about the gambling, thing that you're talking about. Chips fall where they may is what is allowing people to go out and vote. And let's get it straight. Let's be honest with people here. We left 2.5 million on the table when we were going to do an animal shelter, and that had that wasn't based on any government funding. Okay, so as far as what's going on with the roads and the schools, Mr. Milano said at our last meeting that funding is not touched and that will be coming forward for our town. So I don't think we should say that. That's not true. We have an opportunity to do the right thing. And, again, I think that the planning board could be working on their own argument, their own, article, I should say. The thing is that you're right. Mr. Mello had said that the 2 years, if we came back with the same article, but if it was different, and he did say that it would have to be on a tight line, but if there was a different article, slightly different, that you'd have to work it. And I think that my question that was to Mr. Mello is if it came into compliance at that point with better, affordability, with relooking at the districts and so forth, and just a totally different article, and it complied, would we be eligible for all of those grant fundings again? So I think that, again, please let the residents decide on this one. And let's stop making them afraid that if they vote one way or another, they're going to lose out on certain things. You have to be honest with people. Let them make the decision. And that's not called letting the chips fall where they may. That's called democracy.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Just a slight clarification. Town council didn't say it would have to be slightly different. The language in the case laws, it would have to be substantially different in order to come back in 2 years. Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to everybody for their thoughtful comments. I am going to take hopefully not as long, because I think for me, this is a really simple thing that boils down to one point, which I'll make at the end. I purposely chose to move to Milton. It reminded me of the town that I grew up in. I grew up in a small farming town in Western Massachusetts, which, don't laugh, was a suburb of the biggest city out there, Springfield. I know everybody's going to chuckle now because Springfield's not that big of a city. But I grew up in literally a farming town. I lived off of Meadow Street. And I loved it. I loved growing up there. I loved everything about the town. Milton reminds me a lot of that town. With all of its flaws, it actually reminds me a lot of the town I grew up in. And I moved out after my mom passed away. I left Agawam when I was 20 years old. I am still in touch with many of my friends back home who have bought their family home, who've continued to raise families there. And I am shocked when I go back there. It's not the same town I grew up in. In fact, now it's a city, and it's thriving, and it's bustling, and it's diverse. Oh my God, is it diverse? And it's so beautiful. You know, I graduated high school with 3 people of color. And now I think their stats are up to almost 20% people of color that live in the town. It's amazing. They've made affordable housing. They've done it in community. They've grown. There's been growing pains, lots of growing pains there. But they've decided to change with the times, with the way our communities are going, with what suburbs have to be now for those big cities that we live by. I love Milton. I would not have picked anywhere else to live. When I moved back to Massachusetts, we lived in Quincy, and we looked around, and I looked at Hingham, and I looked at Weymouth, and I found Milton, and I fell in love. As I think many of us have that weren't born and raised here. I think we fell in love with the town. We fell in love with the people in our town. And that hasn't changed for me with this zoning. There's a lot of words being thrown around. There's a lot of accusations. There's a lot of different opinions. And that is a beautiful thing, because I'm happy that I live in a town where all opinions and all thoughts do matter. We may not agree, but they do matter. But for me, if I was to sit and wait for something to be perfect before I ever started to do anything, I would still be living in my parents' basement, waiting for the perfect person to come along and sweep me off my feet, waiting for the perfect time to have children, waiting for the perfect time to buy my perfect house, waiting for the right college to come along. For those of you that know me, I'm a pretty liberal woman. I went to a Southern Baptist college. Like, let's just put this in perspective. I did not wait for the perfect thing to come along ever. And I'm not going to wait here. And the main reason why I'm not going to wait here, and the last thing I will say, is that it's the law. A lot of us don't like the laws. A lot of us try and change laws. I do. I wrote laws for many years. But I wrote policy that thankfully became law that now people have to follow, and I kind of like that, because I think I wrote it better. But when I was doing that, when I was writing laws, I listened to people. People came to me with opinions. People came to me with suggestions. And you know what? Those suggestions got put in. I, like my fellow colleagues on this, have not heard any suggestions from anybody. Not one person that's telling me no has come to me and said, Erin, I really think we should take out these 2 streets in East Milton and put these 2 streets in the Columbines in. And the reason why they haven't done that is because it is such a fine, delicate dance of how to make this zoning work. It is something that our people that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars have done for months and months and months with our town. I can't tell you how many times Tim came to the planning board with new ideas, new ways to accomplish this, because we went back and we did this and we did that, because we had to try everything. It's not perfect. I don't know one thing on this planet that is perfect. Nothing. My street's not perfect. My 80s kitchen's not perfect. I love my kids, but they're not perfect. Nothing is perfect in this world, but we try our best and we do what's right. And at the end of the day, we follow the law. This is a law. It's not, well, if they had read it differently, they wouldn't have voted for it. 180, whatever, 3 politicians in our state voted for this. 4 didn't. That's a massive spread. 66% of our voters here in town voted to comply with the law. That's a massive spread. This is not something that is just, let's wait and see. It's not. This is, we have a law. And I personally did not run for the select board to be named in a lawsuit as a defendant. That goes against everything I stand for in this country. I am an almost 50-year-old woman going to law school because I believe in democracy, because I believe in making a difference, because I believe in the law. There's absolutely no way that this town is a unicorn. God, I know I tell my kids I'm a unicorn all the time and I'm the most perfect thing. But we are not a unicorn. We have to follow the law. And so everybody can say what they want. Everybody can have their opinions about the letters and the money and the lies or the fear mongering, or let the people speak. Well, at the end of the day, it's a law. And I honestly cannot even believe that we're at this point. I don't know. We've been talking about this. This is like the 17th million meeting I've been at with it where we're talking about this. And it's the law. Take all those words, put them over on one side, put them on the other side, put them on the Suburban Shopper, put them in the Milton Times. But nobody is coming down to the fact that this is a law and we are citizens of this country, and this country is based on laws. Period. I'm not getting into the fray with the rest of this because I'm not going to be defended in lawsuit. I can't even imagine that that would be a possibility. It's the law. You may not like it, but you got to follow it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Bradley, Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over 3,000 people signed a petition to bring this to a vote, to a townwide vote. I think that's significant. That's a big segment of the population that thought it was important enough that they should have the opportunity to exercise their free will and have a vote. I think that's important to say. You know, we're seeing other things that are happening in the news. I mean, if you've looked at the news, you've seen that the Newton teachers are on strike and they're not following the law because they believe in what they believe in, and they're taking the financial consequences of that. So people need to do what's right. They need to do what's right for the community. People that are the voters, they need to go out there and be able to have the right to vote, whether they vote for or against this. That's their right. And I don't want to take away a right from somebody that's a taxpayer in this community. I think that we represent, as you know, Ms. Bradley knows, I always say, we represent everybody in the community. And we could have done a better plan. And I know at one point, even at one of the pre-meetings before town meeting, Mr. Zulus, you were talking about even going up 10 stories on one of the buildings, and then that never came to fruition at our meeting. So I think even in the last minutes, we were, you know, scrambling to do something. We have a planning board. This is what they work on, is zoning. I think from what I'm hearing, they're committed to working on a plan. I think we can do better for all of the residents in this town instead of trying to get something out that isn't right for the community. But again, I think the most important thing is people came forward and want to bring it to a vote. I think let people vote. Thank you.
And I think, thank you, Ms. Musto. I don't think anyone is suggesting that the people shouldn't vote or won't vote or exercise their free will. I think the question is what this board's position is going to be. And then just to clarify, you know, no one, when I met with the neighbors over in Cortlandt Circle last, I guess it was last October, nobody was scrambling. No one was, what we were trying to do is see if there were better options. And I committed to them to ask the planning department and the consultants if they could come up with better options, including whether we could put more into Granite and less in the other ones. And there was an additional option that came up, but nobody seemed interested in it. But we're trying. You know, that's what we do. We try. And it seems to me we'll continue to try, but there just isn't anything else. No one has suggested anything else. So sure, I mean, we can continue to try, but you know, it's certainly been, you know, it's been more than 18 months of effort. And certainly this plan has been out there since the beginning of September. And you know, again, we can put it on our agenda if there's something else. It just, no one has suggested anything. But I think this board since September has always said that we welcome anything else, but just hasn't come. Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, and in the absence of any additional plan, and I would just add that the planning board is actually still working on our plan to raise the affordability requirements from 10 to 15%, which I appreciate. I would like to make a motion, a conditional motion, and you can work on my language here, so that if we can meet again for Mr. Wells, that the select board will recommend a yes vote for the February 13th, 2024 ballot question on Article 1 from the December 4th, 2024 special town meetings for zoning bylaw and map amendment for compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. Vote subject to not being able to meet again before February 13th.
I'll second.
Yeah, motion's been made and seconded. Just to clarify on the 10% affordability, under the law, there's a requirement that there be an economic analysis be completed in order to increase the affordability from above 10%. Planning board has it in their docket to commission that economic analysis. Hasn't happened yet. We're hoping it will happen. And we're hoping it will happen soon. So anyway, I know there's been discussion of it, but again, that's the planning board's doing it. I wouldn't suggest that this board step in because it's really the planning board's effort. Hopefully they'll do it. I suppose this board could, if it doesn't materialize, because I know there's a great interest in increasing the percentage from 10% to as much as we can. But that economic analysis that again sits with the planning board right now, that's a precondition to being able to increase the percentage. With respect to the motion that's been made and seconded, it was a motion to recommend a yes vote on the February 13th ballot. And again, I think it was fair, but I think Mr. Zoll, I would suggest subject to reconsideration at a subsequent meeting prior to February 13th, if one should occur.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
I concur.
All right. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
No.
Mr. Zoll,
Yes.
and Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 5, discussion approval, letter regarding DCR's potential closure of Chickatobit Road and the proposed project at Randolph Ave and Chickatobit Road. Mr. Milton.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I provided for review a letter drafted that would be sent to EEA, which administers the environmental review process. We previously submitted a comment as part of the environmental review process for Chickatobit Road project. As we discussed at our prior meeting, DCR also submitted a comment letter, which stated that they are assessing the feasibility of permanently closing Chickatobit Road to vehicular traffic for the long-term benefit of the Blue Hills Reservation. They asked that the proposal to close Chickatobit Road be considered as an alternative of the design of the intersection improvement project, and that they asked that there's a project team established with MassDOT to consider this and work it in over the forthcoming design process, this potential option. I have drafted a letter for the board to potentially send to Mass DEA, as I mentioned, with copies to MassDOT and DCR, asking to just confirm what portions of Chickatobit Road they're speaking about. I am assuming they mean the portion heading where there is a gate heading towards Quincy and Braintree, but their letter did not specify exactly what they were talking about. The letter notes that, there certainly may be design improvements for having one leg of the intersection no longer needed, but they request additional information about it, request that alternatives are thoroughly studied, and that the town wants to better understand how the proposal may impact traffic volume, safety, and congestion. If this project team is established, the letter asks that the town be part of that team. And then there's just a closing note that we do have a water tower in this portion of the road that we will need to maintain access to. That's what I've drafted. Happy to hear any edits or answer any questions about the letter as it currently stands.
Comments or questions? Mr. Zoll and then Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nick, just on the on that water tower, is there a way to get there if that road is closed there from Milton?
No, not presently, but it's next to an education center as well. So I assume some kind of, it'll probably be closed to the general public, but again, this is the information that I don't have to answer that. As if the gate were closed, the town technically would not have access.
Yeah, I guess I'm, just drawing from what Mr. Wells said at our last meeting, I'm concerned if it's the plan is just to close a gate, that's not going to show up on people's Google Maps, and it almost certainly would result in more traffic accidents, not fewer. So I'm appreciative that I'm supportive of this letter. I was just curious about the location of the water tower. Thank you.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the letter is very good. I do have a question about the last paragraph on the first page. While reducing the turns at this location may make redesigning, that sentence there. It almost feels like we're giving him that this will make it, that will make it easier and reduce potential left-hand turns. I'm almost wondering if we should have something in there because, right now they don't have to do anything except for just designate the left-hand turn signalization. So if we're it's almost making it look like we're giving him that, that redesigning it, will reduce potential left-hand turns. And I thought that the whole thing was that we want to make them just safer. So their own study back in 2018 from the engineer showed that that there was an alternative that was better. So I don't know if that rephrasing that at all would be better. That's the only question I have on that line. Thank you.
Roxanne, Ms. Musto, I had exactly the same thought and concern. And what I was going to suggest along those lines for that sentence is starting the sentence with where we begin on the second line, the town requests, and then say the town requests that EEA ensure that any alternatives, and then take down any alternatives for redesigning the intersection or reducing left-hand turns be thoroughly studied, et cetera, et cetera. So that was my thought, because I agree with you. I had the exact same point that you did. And I thought maybe if we say, well, any alternatives for redesigning or reducing left-hand turns, we want to make sure they're thoroughly studied. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that line, it's almost like you're giving them that otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to put in there. So I do like that. Thank you.
You think that works? Do you think that works the way I suggested it?
I think it does. I mean, obviously see what the rest of the board thinks, but I think that's important to do. And then if we do agree with this, can you send out like the updated copy, Nick, once it's corrected and we agree upon it?
Sure.
So
Thank
I
you.
think you'd say, sorry, Roxanne, I think you'd
Go
say
ahead.
redesigning the intersection. See, it says alternative to redesigning the intersection.
Right.
Yeah,
So we'd strike that first whole half.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was, I know, Roxanne, that's the part I was like, I had the same thought, but we're kind of giving them that, so.
Right. I think that looks good.
you were.
Obviously see what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. We got a thumbs up from Mr. Zoll, so, all right, anything further on that? Do we want to have a motion on that?
I'll move to approve the letter regarding DCR's potential closure of Chickatobit Road and the proposed project at Randolph Ave and Chickatobit Road as amended.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Zoll,
Yes.
and Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 6 is discussion approval of a payment for or financial support for the community forum, which we initiated back in October when we asked the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association to put together a forum for our residents to talk to one another about everything that is going on in the Middle East and elsewhere. And the forum has come together. It is scheduled for Sunday, February 4th, from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Pierce Middle School. And what Milton Interfaith Clergy Association has asked us is if we could sponsor a payment for the services of 2 facilitators. They have identified 2 facilitators. And so they are asking us to support the forum with $1,000 to pay for the services of the facilitators at the forum. Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm delighted that this forum is happening. As everyone knows or should know, that the problems of anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia have not disappeared. If anything, they've increased since the terrible, tragic terrorist events of October 7th. And I think it's our duty as a select board to support it. I'm personally going to be missing the Milton High School performance of 6 in order to make it on time for this. And I would encourage anybody who can go to the Milton High School theater this weekend. There's going to be some great stuff on, but this is a critically important event. And I'm planning on being there, and I wholeheartedly believe that we should be supporting it. I'd like to, if Roxanne would like to make the motion, I'd like to give her that prerogative. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I'm just, well, a couple of things. I think it's great that we're having, that the Interfaith Clergy is hosting this forum at Pierce. And I think it's good that we're letting people know about it and when it's going to be. And obviously it's an important topic. I just have a couple of questions. Nick, have we done this before where, religious organizations are the hosts of this forum? Have we done that before where we've monetarily supported organizations like that?
I think this is the town is participating in it and has been actively involved in helping coordinate between the police department and the schools. So it's not the town supporting a religious organization. So I think that's the clarity, or the difference rather, in terms of how this is moving forward.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think the payments would be directly to the facilitators, not the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, I think, helped find the facilitators, but the payments would be directly to each of the 2 facilitators, not to the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association. But I think it's a good point, Roxanne. It's a very good point.
I guess my follow-up would be, I understand that now that you've explained it. I just wonder if we're setting a precedent going forward because, certainly if we all individually want to give money towards facilitators, I get that. But with the town using resources on this, I know there was something that happened not too long ago. I think it was an organization that had something about Ukrainian, crisis. I don't recall that we helped sponsor or anything. And I don't believe that we're listed even as the sponsors of this. It's coming through the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association. So I think it almost looks like it's an intermeddling of state and church. And I get a little nervous about that and setting a precedent with this and going forward. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think we asked, our board asked Micah to put this together. And now they have come back and said in the context of putting this together, they they have 2 facilitators that need to get paid, and they have asked the town, see if the town would want to pay for those facilitators for this forum. So, so I think I think there's enough of a distinction there, but it may be something that we could check with town council. Problem is, the forum is Sunday, in terms of getting the approval. Ms. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might have missed this, but did somebody mention how much the ask is for?
It's each of the facilitators is, it would be paid $500.
And is the check being, who's the check being written to?
It would
The
go to the
individual person as a consultant?
Yes, it would go to each of the facilitators for the services provided.
And they have their own company, so it wouldn't go to the interfaith clergy. Is what I'm trying to get at is when you write a check, you make it out to somebody. We're making it out to.
Yes.
Okay.
This would go to the 2. This would go to the. We get an invoice. Well, first we get an invoice.
Right.
Right. So we don't pay anything without an invoice. So we'd get an invoice from the facilitator for the services provided, and then if it's approved, we would pay the invoice.
So, given that, and given the, I'm pausing because I want to make sure that I am picking the right words. And I guess I should say the, deeply emotional, outpouring we saw with what happened in town. I think that it's our responsibility to try and heal some of those wounds. And I think by bringing in a facilitator to work with the town to discuss these issues is a positive thing. I hope that everybody that sent emails, that stopped me on the street, that yelled at me in front of my house, will come to this meeting and we can start to work together and start to heal some of the wounds and hear each other, hear all sides. So I personally would support this. I don't have the motion in front of me, but I'm going to guess that some of the members with their hands up probably does. So I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Mr. Zoll and then Ms. Mustin.
I was going to make a motion, but if Ms. Musto has a separate point, I'd like to let her go first.
Sure, thank you. I do want to say that I am supportive of this. I just want to make sure that we, just have some clarity on it, only because I understand there are 2 separate people that are separately getting paid that are facilitators, but going forward, if another situation arises, how will we handle that? And, I just, like I said, this is, if we really haven't done something like this before, we just want to make sure that we're consistent, so that's all.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. Precedent in these kinds of things is very important. So it's a very good point. I guess it's a good point. It's a good point, Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no further discussion on this, I would like to move to authorize $1,000 to support the community forum. How do we dwell together in peace? Scheduled for Sunday, February 4th, 2024 from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Pierce Middle School.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 7 is discussion update approval of the Milton Landing Lot B proposals from Dexter Southfield and Milton Yacht Club. Is this something we can wait for Mr. Wells on? Is it possible?
It's just a quick update.
Okay. Oh, so it's an update. Mr. Milano.
Sure. So since the board had discussed moving forward negotiations with Dexter Southfield, I have been in touch with Dexter to discuss their proposal for Lot B. And I just wanted to press the board that they really want to be good to go for this boating season, which begins middle to end of March for their rowing team. And we know we have an obligation to the yacht club to keep, to provide them storage through June, and the board has indicated, you know, wanting to reach a resolution for all three parties. So we've talked about a way to have have Dexter utilize Lot A, which is mostly vacant now, for the beginning of growing season and then as we work towards a full resolution with each of the parties down there, we'll have everybody squared away for long-term boat storage. So that's the update on Dexter. They're very eager. They're planning to install a low-profile dock for public use. I've met with the Neponset Rowing Club, who currently occupy Lot C, to discuss with them, give them an update, keep them updated. I've reached out to the yacht club a few times, haven't been able to coordinate them with a meeting, but that's just the last piece here to get squared away. So that's my update at this time. Nothing permanent, but I mean, nothing to act on, but we're trying to pull together all three groups down there for a solution that works for everybody for the next 5 years.
Comments or questions? Ms. Brett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just gonna say that we should put this off until Member Wells can be with us, since he is the chair of the Milton Landing Committee. So I just want to make sure that we're not going further on this topic until he's available to be with us.
Okay. All right, anything else on item 7? So we'll discuss this more at the next meeting with Mr. Wells. Item 8 is discussion update on the FY 2025 budget. Is there an update? Is Mr. Milano, Ms. Bradley, who's?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are continuing to meet with our counterparts on the school committee. We are continuing to have great conversations with them about the state of affairs for our town. And Mr. Milano is going to provide a brief update with I think he's going to show us the governor's numbers that came in. Is that correct, Mr. Milano?
I certainly can.
You don't, if people want to go and watch our meeting, they can watch it and see all the numbers, but so far we only have the governor's numbers. We're waiting to see how that shakes out. Of course, we won't get the House numbers until, gosh, is it March? And then the Senate numbers in May. So obviously we're playing with just the governor's numbers, but it doesn't look as good as it has in years past, is what I can say right now, right? Mr. Milano, please use better words than I can.
Yeah, I'll just for a little bit more particular information, the state aid numbers from the governor's budget were released 2 weeks ago, or last week rather. And state aid in Milton, which has been strong over the past couple of years, our net aid, so our state aid minus what they charge us for various items, results in a net aid number in fiscal 25 per her proposal that will decrease. So rather than expecting state aid to increase, which is typical, we're actually going to get less money in fiscal 25 than we did in fiscal 24. One of the main factor of that is that town is only receiving $30 per student in fiscal 25 for her proposal, whereas in the past few years we've received more than that due to changes around the Chapter 70 student aid formula that had been implemented. So it caught us, I will admit, a little bit off guard, a little bit by surprise to see state aid drop so dramatically year over year. So it's not good news for us. In terms of where the budget stands presently, with our requested level service budget compared to where we anticipate revenues, we're looking at a gap of about $3.9 million presently. We do have another meeting of the Finance Committee scheduled for February 15th. The Capital Improvement Planning Committee met this morning. They are also planning to meet that same week to finalize the capital budget. So we're making progress slowly but surely. Hope to present a balanced budget at that meeting on the 15th. And just the last thing I'll note is that we do have a number of needs-based budget requests that exceed folks' level service requests. So to fund any new or increased services would require more funding than we have, even where we're already faced with trying to close a gap of about $3.9 million. So that's where things stand. We'll certainly have a fuller update on our next meeting on February 27th after the meetings of the Capital Committee and the Joint Finance Committees in 2 weeks.
Ms. Malone, any comments or questions from members? Item 9, discussion approval of meeting minutes. We ready to move forward on December 4th, December 11th, and December 19th?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 4th, 2023, December 11th, 2023, and December 19th, 2023.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus, yes. Item 10, public comment response. Do you have any public comment response? Seeing none. Item 11, future meeting dates. We have the 27th of February and the 12th of March, but I think we're going to try to see if we can do something next week. Good.
Yeah, it looks like availability is best. And Monday's probably too late by now, but end of the week, Thursday later in the day, like 5 o'clock or later, or Friday during the day. Obviously we'll need to speak or get confirmation from each of you. But based on some initial feedback, that's looking like the best timing. But I'll reach out separately after the meeting.
Okay. Anything further on that? Item 12, future agenda items. Do we have anything on that? You can obviously send an email as you do, or on that. Item 13, discussion approval memorandum of agreement with the Milton Professional Management Association for fiscal years 2023 to 2025. Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We reached an agreement with this association a week ago. The union ratified the agreement. It's a 3-year contract in accordance with our other ones. The cost of living adjustment is 2%, 2%, 2%. In years 2 and 3, there's an additional 0.5% increase. Year 2 in step 6, and year 3 in step 8. In addition to that, we adjusted their sick leave accruals. We've also agreed to an increase on professional development. There's money set aside for professional development for folks in this association. We agreed to increase that for folks to be able to take advantage of programs and classes they might want to take. That's the general outline of the agreement. I'm happy to take any further questions if there are.
Comments or questions? Appreciate the collaboration between your office, Mr. Milano, and the Professional Management Association. Do we have a motion to approve that agreement?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Zulus, yes. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day. Don't make it a good day, make it a great day. And we will see you again when we see you, maybe at the end of next week. Thank you all.
Bye.